Hi, welcome to this how to play video for Monumental. Monumental is a brand new game for 1 to 4 players, which lasts about 1 hour and a half, and it is a civilization game with a twist. It utilizes heavily the deck building mechanism together with a very fresh idea and a lot of cool ideas from 4X games. In Monumental, each player leads a unique civilization, but how will you shape your destiny and how will history remember you? Do you dare to succeed as a warmonger, as a pioneer of cultural and scientific progress, or as an architect of a great city full of remarkable wonders? Only the player with the most impressive civilization at the end of the game will be remembered throughout history. The aim of the game is to develop your civilization. You can do that by constructing new buildings and wonders in your city and at the various provinces you conquer. You can achieve new scientific knowledge and cultural development and use your military power to conquer areas that are around you. Setup in Monumental is very easy. You assemble the map by using the correct layout for the number of players that they are sitting around the table. There are various setups in the rulebook. Here we have a setup for 4 players, but you can also build your own map very easily. You place barbarians and free towns tokens face up, and for each market you randomly take as many tokens as players. These are their barbarian tokens, so they are set up based on the layout, and here the market tokens. There are various markets in the game. You take as many, here we have 4, as the number of players. You can distinguish markets here, here, here and here. Each one is a different market, and you can see that by the different name on the market, and the reason for that is that because each player can only own 1 token from each market, so his explorer needs to move around the board to acquire more. There are various tiles that make up the map, and you can see water tiles like this one, forest tiles like this one or that one, plain tiles, this type of tiles which look like a swamp or a hill, I don't know, most probably a swamp. You also have the center where you have a volcano, and here is a separate specific tile. This is your capital tile, and each player has 1 tile like that where his civilization starts from. Another thing to get familiar with, besides the markets that we have seen before and the barbarian tokens that they go on every tile besides the water tiles and the capital tile. Actually, here we need to have 1 more. What you also have is the production tokens, which are these tokens here. Very nice art. Plus you also have the free towns. You also have 1 free town per player playing the game, and usually these are located where the markets are. If you want to create your own map, you need to remember that you can take all the tiles you want from the box, but you need to respect some instructions. What you need to do is you need to take 1 free town for each player and place them randomly on the map, except from the capital and water tiles, obviously. You randomly place 1 barbarian token face up with the number showing on their tiles, except again from water tiles and capital tiles, that is. And the value of the barbarian tiles surrounding each capital should be the same for each player, so there is no difference between the players when they start up. Also, you place 1 market per player randomly on the board, and for each market you take as many tokens as many players they are taking part in the game, and you put them face down on a stack on the board. For 3 players, for example, you take 3 market tokens. Then you place 1 production token on each tile except water tiles and tiles with a market, and of course your capital. The next thing you do is you place all the resource counters, production, military and science, and all the wonder construction counters besides the play area to make a common stack. Here's how the resource counters look like, but they're going to be plastic resources for the final production, so this is a prototype, as you have guessed. Black stands for production, blue stands for science, and red stands for military. You also have these cubes, here they are green, but on the final production copy will be big yellow plastic cubes that they mark the progress of your wonder. Also we have gold, which is a wild resource for the basic resources of the game, cultural tokens, spare barbarian tokens that are not used, production tokens that are not used, and also All the wonders have a specific tile because you're going to build wonders in your provinces, so you need to take the corresponding token to be able to put it in a province that you occupy. Then you sort out the development cards by era 1, 2 and 3 and shuffle each era separately. This is the first era. You can see the era a card belongs to by the corresponding Latin symbol here. This is era 1, for example. This is era 2. And this is era 3. It's a wonder of era 3. What you do is you shuffle each era deck separately, and then you place the corresponding era 1, era 2 and era 3 card. These are separate eras, this being the more modern, this is the medieval and this is the ancient, and you stack each deck on top of each other to create a common development deck. Above the development deck you sort the basic buildings cards by type. You have workshops, laboratories and archery ranges. You place 3 separate piles in line face up above the development deck. All these cards are the same, for example, laboratories. The art on the card is fantastic, by the way, and this is a prototype, but yet it's so amazing, the art, that we really love to play the prototype. Next you have your city setup. Each civilization has a deck with cards common to all civilization and several specific cards. 1 knowledge card, 1 warlord card, 1 specific building and 5 cultural policies. These cards are the specific cards to each civilization. All the rest are common. You choose a civilization and you take the corresponding components. You have the 15 civilization cards, the 5 cultural policy cards, your warlord card, and then you have 10 units. 1 warlord, 9 troops, 2 explorers and 2 outposts. Let's see an example of the above. This is our warlord. We have Heracles, which is actually how in Greek Hercules is pronounced. We're really pleased. We could only take the Greeks, obviously, since I'm a Greek. So this is our warlord. This is how the cultural policies look like. You can distinguish them obviously because they say cultural policy on the top, and also you see they want the cost of a cultural token. You have 5 of them. We're going to come back to those. So you take those. You can always have a look within the game about your cultural policies and decide your strategy, but you take them and you make a face down pile and put it next to your warlord card. Then what you do is you have your personal civilization deck as we described before. You take it and you open a grid of 3 by 3, a total of 9 cards from this deck in front of you. This is your city. You also take 2 gold tokens and you're ready to go. Just to show our troops, these are the tokens for the units. We have 9 troops in them. This is the basic version of the game, but you can also have these gorgeous, amazing, superb, awesome miniatures that we're really looking forward to see. These are 2 explorers that you get also with your civilization. Obviously your warlord, which is a bit bigger than the rest. And also you have 2 outposts starting outside your capital, and you will be able to build them within the game. Obviously, same goes for the rest of the civilizations for the players taking part in the game. The basic game comes with 5 civilizations, and these are the Greeks, the Danish, the Egyptians, the Chinese and the Japanese. They all come with very nice art on the tokens, but even more importantly with exceptionally well sculptured minis that they look awesome and they give a 3D excellent perspective on the game. The player who most recently visited another country becomes the starting player. You start from the last player in turn order and proceed counterclockwise. Each player chooses a capital tile. Then you place your warlord and all your troops and explorers on the capital tile. Finally, you place your outpost in a supply next to your capital. You're ready to go. We will also need to create the development display. We flip the top 6 cards from the development deck, putting them face up in a line beside the deck to create the development display. In a 2-player game, instead of creating 2 on one single 6 card line, we create 2 with 2 rows parallel with 3 cards each. So what we do is we are now in era 1 and we start revealing cards till we get 6 of those cards in a row, and then on top of that we have the basic buildings. This is how the creative development display would look, with 6 cards in a row, starting from position 1 to position 6. So how to play the game? The player with the first player token goes first, and then the next player takes a turn, and then the next player takes a turn, until the end of the game. On your turn, you complete the following 4 phases in specific order as mentioned. First of all, you activate your city. You take actions depending on what cards you activated, then you replenish your city, and then you replenish the display. Let's see all these phases separately. This phase is the core of the game, and in my personal opinion is the most fresh and brilliant idea sitting under the hood with this deck building mechanism. I really love this 3x3 grid and the way you activate your city. When you activate your city, you choose one complete row and one complete column of cards, and you use them in this turn. You declare the cards you are activating to other players, and you rotate them each by 45 degrees. If you activate a knowledge card, you activate the knowledge card and the card dealt on top of it. We haven't spoken about knowledge cards because when you deal a card, for example, these are the policies, sorry. If you deal a knowledge card from your deck, I think you start with 1, as we mentioned, yeah. When you deal it, when you fill in your grid, you tuck it underneath a card, so it never goes on its own. This is the benefit of knowledge cards. They go under your basic cards, and they actually give you more boosted actions because you perform both cards. So when you activate a knowledge card with another card on top of it, you do both cards. And this is one of the cool ideas with the knowledge cards. You're trying to achieve them because you make each card which has a knowledge card beneath it even better action because it has more things to do. So coming back to the thing, if you activate a knowledge card, you activate the knowledge card and the card dealt on top of it, because you always deal knowledge cards beneath the main cards. The cards you activate will generate resources, an effect that you will be able to use during this turn. You are completely free to choose the order in which you gain or use the resources and the effects of your activated cards. Unless the text of the card says something different, or the card is activated again due to the effect of another card, you can only use the card effect once the turn is activated. It is not mandatory, obviously, to use the card. You can bypass it. If due to an effect of a card you have to draw a card from your city, like any other deck building, you shuffle your discard pile. Say you have space here for your discard pile, you shuffle it and you create a new draw deck and continue using it from there. So let me quickly show you a couple of examples of selections for activating your city. For example, I can use this row, I tilt it 45 degrees, and this column. This is one example. Another example, obviously on another turn, this is just thinking what to do, would be to use this column and this row. So I get to perform all these cards and these cards in any order I want, and I can take the resources, take the benefits, take the effects. I choose the order of which I take advantage of each card. So just to give you an opinion about it as well, I think this is a brilliant mechanism because it's like having a big hand of cards which are on display. You only get to select yourself which ones you want to use for this specific turn. It's not any random draw of the hand from your deck builder. So this is more strategic and more well thought on what you want to use each round. And then you have also endless possibilities of which columns and rows you activate, depending on what you want to do and what you want to achieve this turn. Excellent idea. A word about resources. There are 3 basic resources. Production is used to build buildings and wonders. This is, for example, a card that gives a production resource to use this turn, the black one. Then science is used to take knowledge cards. Science is this one, the cards with the blue symbol on the top right of the card. You use it to buy knowledge cards from the display, that's on the top. And then military, which is this one, for example, the one with the red. Look at the gorgeous art on these cards, it's amazing. And this is unique to each civilization, the art obviously. The red one, again, coming back to the explanation, is about military. It is used to move units inside your provinces or to conquer and move explorers as well. Production can be generated by cards, by the production tokens on the map, by a market token, and by a free town token. Respectively, science and military can be generated by cards, by market token, and by free town token as well. During your turn, when you generate production, science and military resources, you take the corresponding counters from the reserve. For example, if I would I'm just zooming out so you can see. If I was going to use this row and this column this turn, I get to take one production token for this card, 2 military tokens for these 2 cards, another military token for this one, and one last production token for this one. So I have those to spend during my turn to acquire new things and do new things in my turn. An important thing to remember is that you must use the production, science and military resources you generate on the turn in which you generated them. Basic resources cannot be saved for later turns, and any unused basic resources are lost, and counters are placed back in the reserve at the end of your turn. When you gain production or market tokens from the board, you place them in your reserve. You may use those at a later turn. For example, this one I will need to use it during my turn, which I generated from a card, but this production token, which I took from the map, I can choose to use it later turn, so I can pass it from turn to turn according to my plans. There are 2 additional resources in the game. This is culture and gold. We have various tokens like those that we use in the game. Culture is used for acquiring new cultural policies. Remember, we start with 5 cultural policies that we have in our civilization, and we need these culture tokens to buy them. We're going to come back with the details. And the next resource, which is a wild, is the gold resource, which is different from the rest. And the reason for those both is that when you generate gold or culture, you take the matching tokens from the stock and put it in your city supply. You may use them at any time during the current turn or a later turn. So they're very precious because especially the gold ones, but also the cultural. But the gold ones are, first of all, wild for the basic resources, and also you can pass them from turn to turn, which is very interesting. Just a quick word about the terminology used in the game. When a card says archive, for example, when you archive a card, you choose any card in your city that you did not activate this turn and remove it from the game. In this way you can balance your deck. For example, you can get rid of cards that you don't want to use anymore, make your deck thinner and be able to use more important cards more frequent in your turn, because they're going to come faster. If you archive a card on an opponent's turn due to some effect, immediately deal a card to your deck, to your city, to replenish it. Also, basic buildings. Those basic buildings, as we have seen, are the workshop, laboratories and archery ranges. We have lots of cards out beside the game board, and we can use them as long as they are enough for people to take, because we still have more cards to take. If any stack of those is finished, then you can't acquire them anymore. When a card says gain, you take a development card or a basic building card as indicated by the ability, and you put it on top of your deck, ignoring its cost. An interesting card about this deck building is most of the deck buildings, when you acquire a new card, you take it and put it on your discard pile, which is actually quite boring in my opinion, because you have to finish all your cards and then reshuffle your deck and then hoping that you're going to get the new awesome card soon. No way. In Monumental, you immediately put it on top of your draw pile, which means it's going to be one of the cards that you're going to draw in your next turn, so you're going to be able to play it right away. Excellent idea. A basic resource. Production, science and military are basic resources, but gold and culture are not considered basic resources. When a card says generate, some cards, for example like the mine, require you to generate specific resources during your turn to be able to use the card's effect. It does not matter how you get these resources. It can be through barbarian token, warlord card, activated cards and so on and so forth. As long as you get these resources, the card effect happens. The resources are not consumed and can be used for other purposes. When a card says spent, some effects like the forum, for example, require you to spend specific resources to generate other resources or effects. And last but not least is the reinforce, another very cool idea about this game. At the end of your turn, you'll see that you discard all the cards that you activated in your row and column. At the end of your turn, if a card says reinforce, You keep a card you activate in your city and you do not discard it. If you reinforce the card that has a knowledge card attached, the knowledge card is discarded, but you get to keep the card itself for the same next round. Next phase is take actions. In Monumental, you may take any number of actions in any order or combination you wish, as long as you have enough resources to spend and pay for them. The actions you can choose from are the following. First of all, you can acquire a development card or a basic building from the display, by paying their cost obviously. Second, you develop a cultural policy by paying cultural tokens, that is. Third, you can conquer a province, we'll see how this happens. Fourth, you can have a military maneuver. Fifth, you can have the build of an outpost. Sixth, you can have move and use of your explorer, very useful, different character that has different objectives. And seventh and last is the scientific progress. Remember that anytime during your turn you can consult your discard pile, and you may also use gold in place of a basic resource, production, science or military, but you can never use gold in place of culture. Okay, let's see all these actions one by one and get familiar with what we do. The first one was acquire a development card or a basic building. In order to enhance your city, obviously, your deck is your city, you can obtain new building, wonder or knowledge cards. The cost to acquire a card is indicated on the card itself. Let's see the different examples. For example, a building card. When you acquire a building card, basic building or a building from the development display, you pay the cost in production shown on the card. Then take the card and place it on top of your deck. You can acquire a basic building card while cards of that type remain in stock. For example, I can take 1, 2 or more workshops as long as I can pay the cost, which is at the bottom left part of the card. I need to pay free production. I can even take 2 cards like that if I can pay, for example, 6 production. Or I can take 1 workshop, 1 archery, range and 1 laboratory. If I am efficient enough to be able to produce 3 plus 2 plus 2, 7 production this turn. I can also obtain cards from the display of the 6 cards in the open market by paying the cost here. For example, the apothecary, which is an era 1 card, has a cost of 4 production and I need to pay it immediately. Similarly, you can obtain a knowledge card from the development display by paying the cost in science, not in production. Here you pay in science. You can easily distinguish the knowledge cards by the blue header instead of the red of the buildings. And here, instead of production, we can see that we need to spend 3 science in order to be able to take mathematics, which would later on produce 1 science for us when we activate this card in our city. Again, the knowledge card goes on top of our deck, same like the buildings. Last but not least, the wonder card. In order to build a wonder, you should proceed in 2 steps of construction by paying the cost for each step. When you acquire a wonder card from the development display, you pay the cost in production shown on the card, in the leftmost circle. We have 2 circles here, one shows 3 and another one shows 3. So I get to spend the first cost, which is only the 3, and I get to start building the wonder. I then put one of those cubes, which is going to be yellow on the final production, to cover the first cost, indicating that I have already paid for the first 3, and then at a later turn I can also move it here to pay another 3 production and then be able to build the wonder. Obviously, if I have not just 3 but 6 production to spare and I want to use them all right now, I can do both steps of building the wonder immediately. When you have built a wonder, immediately gain the acquisition benefits shown on the card, taking usually resources and counters as necessary. You place the wonder card on top of your deck and then return the construction token to the stock. For example, this card, the Great Wall, has an immediate effect. You may archive a card to gain 2 military. You have a thunder symbol here, which means that this acquisition effect happens immediately. Then I take the card and, like any other card, I would put it face down on top of my draw pile. Then I get to find the matching wonder token on a province control. I put it on the province that I control, including my capital tile. but keep in mind I can only have one wonder per province capital. For example, here I control this province, so if I was building Stonehenge, for example, I select this token for Stonehenge and I can put it here. So I can only have one wonder per province or capital city. You can immediately guess that wonders provide additional victory points at the end of the game, and this is one of the reasons, besides the acquisition effect, that I want to build wonders in the game. And last word about wonders is that when I build a wonder and I'm under construction, say for example I have built the first step of this wonder, and I put this token here on top of that, I get to only have one wonder under construction per turn next to my city. The second thing I can do is I can develop a cultural policy. Developing cultural policies gives you new actions or capacities. You may develop a cultural policy card of your choice from your cultural deck by paying with cultural tokens from the supply. The cost of the cards goes higher to higher as you develop more policies. For example, your first policy costs only one culture token, the second policy costs 2, and so on. When you develop a cultural policy, you place the card face up beside your city, next to your warlord, and you immediately gain the acquisition benefit shown on the card. Cultural policy cards will also give you an ongoing effect which remains active until you develop another policy. When you develop a new policy afterwards, you place the card face up on top of the previous policy and keep the acquisition benefit though visible. Whenever you develop a new policy, you also immediately repeat the acquisition benefit of all previously developed policy cards, so you have like a combo. For example, this is the cultural policies remember we had at the beginning of the game, where you see blank art is because it's a prototype and art is also still being developed. So we have 5, each civilization has 5. The cost, as you can see, says 1 to 5 because if it is your first, you need 1 cultural token, if it is your second, you need 2, and if it's your third, 3, 4, and 5. When you take one cultural policy, you take the deck and you decide which one you go for first, so you get to make a mini tech tree, for example, and what you do is you select one, you put the rest face down, and you put it next to your city, like that. You immediately take the acquisition benefit, which has the thunder symbol. Let's see this one. You draw and use one card immediately, and then it has an ongoing effect that is like that. When you get to develop a second policy in the future, what you do is you cover this one with the new one, and you get to do both acquisition effects, but the ongoing effect is only applicable for the newer policy. The same goes as you develop more and more cultural policies, you develop all acquisition benefits, but only the shown visible effect happens. Also, keep in mind that you can go all the way up to 5 cultural policies, which is the maximum your civilization has. Next thing you can do is you can conquer a province. This is the third option you have. At the beginning of the game you have 10 units, 1 warlord and 9 troops on your capital tile. You can conquer any province tile which is adjacent either to your capital or any province tile you already control. Use military resources to do that. With 1 military, this is the red marker, you may move 1 unit into the attacked province. You must move into the attacked province a number of units equal to the defense value of the province. Those units must be taken from your capital tile or from any other provinces you control that are connected to the newly conquered province through provinces that you already control. You may use the same units to perform several attacks during your turn as long as you can pay 1 military to move each unit. Keep in mind though that you can never move your unit so that you would be none of your units or outposts on a province. So you cannot abandon completely. For example, if this was yours, then you cannot take it and go somewhere else to leave a province unoccupied and abandon it. Similarly, you control a province as long as you have at least 1 unit on the outpost or an outpost on it. So for example, here I control both this province and this one. Here I have an outpost and here I have a unit. We're gonna come back to this, but explorers do not count for conquering or controlling provinces. So let's see a real example here. For example, it's the beginning of our turn and we have, as you can see, adjacent provinces which have barbarian tokens, like this one. So if I get to expend military tokens to move military units into this province, I would be able to conquer it. To do so, I need to match the strength, the defense value of the province, which is the number of the tile, which is 1, plus the number on the barbarian tile. This is 1 plus 1, which equals 2. So I need to move at least 2 units here to match the defense value of this province, and then I get to defeat this barbarian. I flip the token and I get to take one of the 2 rewards, either 1 gold or move 2 units, and then I take it next to my city. Keep in mind, this is something different. This is a production token that you get to collect with your explorer. We're going to come back to it. But in this case, we would have conquered this new province. When you conquer a province with a free town token, you must move a number of own units equal to the defense value of the province tile, and at least 1 unit if the value of the tile is 0. And then you pay the required resources. For example, for free states, you don't only need military strength, you need to pay also resources to conquer free states, free cities. Then take the free town token and immediately choose one of the 2 benefits shown on the back of the token. You must choose to the benefit immediately, and any basic resources gained will be lost if you do not spend them this turn, and the other resources, gold or culture, are placed in your reserve and you can keep it next to you beside your city. For example, I'm located here and I want to conquer this free city, so I need to move at least 1 military unit to match the defense of the tile, and I need to get to pay 2 production, because this tile shows 2 production. Another one could show, for example, 2 signs. Then I would need to pay 2 signs, and so on and so forth. So the difference with the free states, the free cities, is that you need to pay both military, to provide military troops to match the strength in military, but also to pay in resources. Also, you can conquer an opponent's province. You may wish to conquer a province controlled by another player. The cost in military resources is equal to the total defense value of the enemy units in the province plus the defense value of the province itself, including outposts and wonders, if any, and the defense value breaks down to each troop gives 1, each warlord gives 2, the warlord strength is 1 only for attack purposes, for defending its strength is 2, the outpost gives 3 value, and any wonder provides 2 defense value. For example, here I have a warlord, which is 2 defense, plus an outpost, which is 3, 2 plus 3 totals 5, plus 1 for this troop 6, and 0 plus 6 is 6. Then if I get to move in here 6 tokens of my army, or any value of 6 in any case, then I get to defeat them and conquer the territory. After you conquer an opponent's province, the opponents must return all the units to the capital tile, so this would go, the outpost would go again next to the reserve, and the warlord and the troops of the opponent will move out and go to their capital. They must take back any outposts and put them next to the supply. Keep in mind that you cannot attack the capital of any opponent, and this capital tile is safe. Each time you wish to conquer a province, you may choose to move your warlord as one of the required units into attacking the province. If you do so once each turn, you immediately gain the benefit on your warlord card, which is quite powerful boost to have each time. Any basic resources gained will be lost if you do not spend them right away this turn. For example, if I use my warlord here, Heracles has the bonus that the first time Heracles conquers a province each turn, gain 1 gold. So I'm favored to use my warlord in my attacking and conquering other provinces, because I get to use his effect on his card. The fourth option I have as an action is military maneuver. Military maneuver is the capacity to move as many units as you want inside the provinces you already control. With 1 military, you may move 1 unit, troop or warlord anywhere in the provinces you control, connected to your provinces or your capital. You cannot move a unit to an isolated province, obviously. When a token or a card grants you the capacity to move 1 or 2 units, you can only move units in a province you already control. For example, I can spend 1 military to move 1 unit back here. The fifth option I have is the outpost. At any time during my turn, I may construct an outpost for free. To do so, I must have 3 or more units, troops or warlord, on a province, and then I return these 3 units from the province to the capital tile and place one of my outposts from the supply onto the province tile. I might respect some instructions, like for example, I can only create 2 outposts during the game. Once built, an outpost cannot be moved. You can only have 1 outpost per province tile that is, and you can create an outpost in an isolated province. If you lose a province with an outpost on it, then you return the outpost to your reserve beside your city. For example, here, if I had been occupying this tile with 3 troops, I could obviously get to return those 3 troops on my capital tile to be able to build an outpost, which has also, as you have already seen before, a defense value of 3, but you cannot move it, and you only get to have 2 on the board. The 6th option you have is you can move and use explorers. Remember, explorers are these different tokens you have. They stand out from the troops and your warlords. They're quite different. They also are different size when you get the version with the minis. And explorers are used to collect resources on the board. You pay again 1 military to move one of your explorers to one adjacent province, regardless to who controls it, and this is the basic cool idea about the explorers. They move around and inside enemy territories to collect resource tokens and go to market tiles, and this is very important because they can get a lot of stuff for you to boost your turn and your strategy. Each turn your explorer, you may perform 1 action from among the 2 options. 1. If your explorer is in a province with a market, you may take the market token, look at them and select one to keep. Obviously, if you go first, you get to take all 4 of them in a 4-player game and get to select the best one for yourself. And then you put the rest face down on the market tile. For example, okay, this is occupied by the Greeks, but say for this example purposes, your explorer, if he was there, you get to take all these 4 tiles from this market, get to see them. They give a lot of interesting boosts and a lot of cool things for you to take. You select which one you want and you put the rest face down again there. Keep in mind that even if that was controlled from the Greeks, I removed it before, but still you can have the explorer moving in territories controlled by other players because it is not a military unit and it can move in a province which is controlled by other players, regardless if the control does not belong to you. Another option is that your explorer moves on a province with a production token, then you take the production token from the province and you take it, put it next to your city. So if I get to get here, I can get to take this production token, which I can pass from turn to turn, and I can select when I want myself to spend it, depending on my strategy, to be able to have 1 more production token for this specific turn. An important thing to note is that an explorer can only take a market token or a production token once per turn. An explorer is only allowed to take at most 1 token from each different market, so you cannot get to take go to the same market again. This is obvious for balance because you need to go and move around the whole game board to be able to visit the other markets, which are located at the 4 distant areas of the map at the beginning of the game, as you have seen, in order to be able to collect different market tiles from there. But you get to spend military movements in the expense of spending military movements tokens to move your troops. So you get to balance what you want to do because the rewards of the markets are quite cool for yourself. Keep in mind that an explorer is not a unit. That means he cannot conquer or control a province. The 7th and last thing you can choose to do as an action is the scientific progress. You pay 2 signs to draw and activate the top card of your deck as if you had activated in this turn within your city. Discard this card at the end along with any other cards you have activated, and then you get to replenish your city as normal. The drawn card, along with any other cards drawn by any other effects, is not considered to be part of your city for the purposes of other card effects. So I get to spend 2 signs to draw 1 card and use 1 more production, and this goes to my discard pile. The 3rd phase we do after our actions during our turn is replenish the city. We add new cards, and after we complete our actions, we pick up all of the cards we activated in our city and put it in our discard pile, and now we deal out new cards from your city deck to fill the gaps in your city. You always deal new cards, 1 by 1, filling the spaces in your grid from left to right and from top to bottom. If you deal out a knowledge card, you immediately deal a 2nd card on top of it. overlay the card so that the effect of the knowledge card remains visible. If you deal out another knowledge card on top of a knowledge card, choose one of the knowledge cards to keep and discard the other. Continue in this way until you have the proper card set up. And also, for example, say we have used this card, this card, this card, this and that one during our turn, and now we get to do the replenish the city phase. That means that if no other effects stand, we get to take the used activated cards, put it in our discard pile, and then our grid still stands. You see we have empty slots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We get to draw cards from our draw pile, filling in the spots from left to right and top to bottom until I have a 3x3 grid. If by any chance I was going to draw a knowledge card, then I get to draw one more new card to put on top of that, like that. And this is activated as we have seen before together with a knowledge card in a subsequent round. If at any point you need to draw cards, for example in the next turn, we get to do these cards and we need to discard all of these cards and get to draw more cards. We don't have cards in our pile. That means that we take our discard pile, we shuffle it, we make a new draw pile, and we continue normally replenishing our city like more or less any other deck building game till we have similarly a 3x3 grid to be able to study and strategize over our next turn. Then the last thing I do, the fourth phase, is replenish the display. In a 3 or 4 player game, if you acquired at least one card from the development display during your turn, shift the remaining cards to the right to fill the gap, then deal new cards from the deck up to 6, no matter which era it is. If you acquired no cards from your development city, take the card furthest from the development deck and place it in the discard pile, and then you shift the remaining cards away from the deck and deal one card to fill the gap like before. Important thing to note is that those actions can only be done at the end of your turn, not during your turn. So here, for example, you have acquired 2 development cards. That means that we get to shift these cards here to the right, and we get to draw 2 more to fill the gap. If in any case in a turn we haven't bought any cards from the development display, that means that the card furthest to the right gets discarded in the discard pile, and then all other cards shift to the right, and then you get to draw one more so that you have in total 6 again. If this is a 2-player game, what you do is if you acquire at least one card from a row, remember you have 2 rows, one row by 3 cards and a second line in parallel by 3 cards. If you acquired at least one card from a row of the development display during your turn, you shift the remaining cards in that row away from the deck to fill the gap, and then you deal to have 3 in that row. If you acquired no cards from a row of a development display, you discard the card furthest to the right, similarly like before, and you fill in the gaps. Okay, so how the end of the game is triggered? The end of the game is triggered when the last card of the development deck is dealt into the development display at the end of the player's turn. Play continues until the player seated to the start player's right has taken a turn, so that all players have taken equal number of turns. Then all players take one additional and final turn, and that way all players would have played the same number of turns. Then we move to scoring achievements to see how our civilization flourished or not during this game. Each player scores points for their achievement as follows. You get 1 point for each knowledge card you have in your deck. This is why you want to get more knowledge cards. You get 2 points for each cultural policy you have developed, and this is another reason to go after cultural policies. For each wonder you have built and you control, or you have conquered from other players, meaning that you control, you get to take 2 points. And also you get 1 point for each province on the game board that you control. Any archived cards beneath your warlord card give no additional points. On top of that, you get to score points for dominance. The player who has the greatest achievement in each of the 4 categories, most knowledge, most provinces, most wonders and most cultural policies, gains an additional 3 points each time. If 2 or more players tied for the greatest achievement in any category, they all receive the 3 points. The player with the most points wins. If you get a tie, the tied player with the most remaining gold wins. And if it's still a tie, the player with the most culture wins. If there is still a tie, I really doubt it, but then all tied players share the victory. Just to mention here, Monumental comes with solo mode, so you get to play solo version for Monumental if you wish so, and the rulebook includes rules for solo gaming. But most importantly than that is you get to have also additional civilization. Besides the 5 that comes in the core game, you get to have additional civilizations, which means additional decks, additional tokens, additional miniatures for the specific different civilizations, so you get even more variety if you get the expansion together with the core box. Not that the expansion is needed itself, the basic game, the core game, provides lots of variety and lots of gameplay for you to enjoy, but you can also, if you are a collector or you want to get everything, or you want to have variety, or even you want to have really cool, awesome looking miniatures as well, why not? You get to take different civilizations as well. Needless to say that the Kickstarter campaign is really kicking and going great. A lot of things have been unlocked during the Kickstarter campaign, which is great. We get to have more monsters, more heroes, a lot of more miniatures, and a lot of more cards. So lots and lots of more stuff daily is added and unlocked during the Kickstarter campaign of Monumental. Okay, so what I think about the game? I really love it. And the reason for that is basically that it gives you a really satisfying feeling, fills all the sweet spots without too much hassle, too many rules and too many details. Your turn is very simple, quite fast, and you get to also organize your turn because you examine your 3x3 grid before your turn comes. It's not all about battle. Obviously conquering territories gives you additional points, but as you can see, each conquered territory only gives you 1 additional point. You get more points for knowledge cards developed and also for wonders that you control and cultural policies developed. So war is not the only path, it is one of the strategies to follow, and this is a cool idea. Another idea is you have this deck building effect, which I haven't seen it before. This deck building which sits under the hood of this game is exceptionally done with this 3x3 grid. A brilliant idea. Not only you get to have an open hand display of 9 cards, you get to choose which cards you use each time, and you get to selectively use some of them and not others, depending on what you really want this turn. You get to do combos with the knowledge cards, because you tuck them under the main cards and you have additional things to do, which is fantastic. You get to do things with your explorer, who moves around the game board regardless of who controls it, to get additional resources for you, very cool, to get additional tokens and additional things and market tokens, which is actually great. The map setup is also important because water tiles cannot be trespassed by troops or any other unit for that purpose. That means that you need to maneuver around the map and the water. And I'm sure a lot of more things are coming with all the monsters and all the details, so much more material to be unlocked. The feeling that the game gives is supreme because it manages to do all this only within 1 hour and a half. I haven't seen that in any Civilization game to do that with such a great sufficient way, I would add. I really enjoyed the prototype. I'm super pumped about playing the prototype. I can't even imagine how great it would be to play the game with these fantastic, absolutely gorgeous miniatures. So really looking forward to get this on the table. Hope you enjoyed this how to play video and my opinion at the end of the video. Till next time, you're watching Epitrapaizoume.